Hello, guys. It's me, the unsmooth criminal, and I'm here with a what if. And I didn't borrow. I took this image from the Crunchy Fet. So, dude, if you're watching this, where do you find your images? Come on, dude. I want to know because I've searched everywhere for good images. I know I have some good images, but not all of them. So, this is what if female Deku was a demon. And I know he's currently doing a demon series with the what if she had a harem. But this is going to be what if Deku was a demon. And her demon ability is to copy quirks. So, it starts off in the middle of the forest with a random group of people and a pregnant woman who's screaming, and then they hear the scream of a little child. They run over and see this little kid, and the woman is happy about this and slowly says, take care of her. I'm not going to survive much longer, but please take care of her. And she finally passes, and her child's there. But everybody's reluctant to take care of this child because this child has horns and a tail. So they look at this child as a demon and say, whoever is the last person to get back to civilization has to take care of this child. And it's a group of heroes that are rescue heroes, and some are fighting heroes. And, ooh, Jerome. And I'll be right back. I gotta do some stuff. Sorry about the sound. But, so the heroes run back to civilization, and the last person that gets back to civilization is Aizawa. Because it was Midnight, Aizawa, Power Loader, and Recovery Girl. Power Loader was there to transport Recovery Girl, and Aizawa and Midnight were there to protect them just in case they were attacked. So Aizawa and Midnight were there to make sure that nothing happened to them, and they were the ones who were racing. Midnight is married to Mirko, and Aizawa is married to Miss Joke. And Aizawa was the last one back between Midnight and Aizawa, and she's like, why don't we both take care of it, and we can be like their parents, the child's parents. And Aizawa says, good idea, I'll tell Miss Joe, I'll tell my wife, and you tell your wife, and we'll get on with the adoption paperwork and the agreement to share the child. And like, okay, so they go back home, and Aizawa takes the child with them and says to his wife that this child was born in the wilderness and her mother just died. We don't know where her father is or who her father is, so we need to take care of this child, and Midnight is willing to take care of this child with us. And Miss Joke says, okay, but you and Midnight are going to be the guardians. I will just be a aunt to her, and Mirko, Midnight's wife, shall be an aunt too. And he goes, that's fine, but she's probably going to be living with us or Midnight more often. And Miss Joke says, why don't we have it to where they have a week with her and we have a week with her? And Aizawa says, that's a good idea. So Aizawa calls up Midnight and asks, did Mirko accept? And she said, no, not exactly. And Aizawa says, what do you mean? She says she wants to see the child before she accepts or declines. So a week goes by and they finally meet up. Aizawa, Joke, Mirko, and Midnight, because they're best friends with each other, and they bring the child and they're taking care of the child. They had the child tested to see what the abilities of the child are, because if they don't know what the abilities of the child are, they're not going to be able to take care of them correctly. So they have made a plan to move Izumi back and forth every year. Because Midnight and Joke are gonna... Or not Midnight and Joke. Miss Joke and Aizawa are going to need Izumi when she turns 5 for the year so she can control her quirk completely. So I'm going to skip 5 years. Izumi calls Mirko Mama and Midnight, and Miss Joke Mommy, and Aizawa Daddy, like a little child would. Because she's been with Miss Joke and Aizawa more often. And she's now 4, so she gets taken to Joke and Aizawa, and they welcome her in, and she walks in. And now it's time for the see if she has a emission quirk or not. They had the test when she was a child, and the doctor said there's a 50-50 chance at this point if she does or doesn't. So they go to the doctor, and the doctor says that she does have an emission quirk, and it's a triple S rated quirk, and she needs... Oops. There you go. And it's there immediately. So if she doesn't learn how to control it quickly, and they ask what is it, and she says demon magic. And they go, what do you mean magic? And she goes, anything a demon could do in these stories of old that is considered magic, she can do. And they go, wait, what? She's that powerful? And the doctor goes, yes, she's that powerful, and I've called her quirk Demon Queen because of her mutation and her magic. And like, makes sense. Ooh, Fight Like Hell by JT Mishima. See? Fight Like Hell. Ooh. Schwabity. Schwabity just released a new one. I don't know that one. So you guys are going to have to look up Schwabity. He's a really good rapper. Yeah, he's a really good rapper. But back on topic. So the next year, Izumi is trained to the bone every day by Aizawa and Miss Joke too. And they keep telling Izumi that if she doesn't have control over her quirk, she can easily hurt them and Mirko and Midnight. And she understands, so she gladly accepts the training. She gets worked to the bone 24/7, 7 days a week, all day, every day for her entire year. And when it's finally Mirko and Miss Jokes, she has complete control over her entire quirk and the transformation ability, so she can get rid of the horns and the tail. So Aizawa says, you want to play a little joke on your on Midnight and Mirko, and Izumi, with a little sadistic personality from her quirk, says yeah. So she makes her horns look like they've been cut off, and her tail look like it has been cut off and scarred. And she walks into Midnight's home and waves hi and just sits there and waiting for Midnight's reaction. And Midnight, being used to seeing Izumi once and then just living with her for a year and then getting rid of her, was waiting for Izumi to come back. So Izumi came back, and she looked at Izumi, said hi, and then looked away, and then took a double take of Izumi and was like, what happened? And Izumi said, I unlocked my quirk. And Midnight's like, I see that. What happened? And she has this smile of, tell me what happened or you're grounded. And Izumi says, I'm training. And she looks at Izumi and says, did Aizawa do this? And she goes, no. And Midnight's starting to get mad at Aizawa because Aizawa said he'd never hurt Izumi, but it looks like he went back on his promise. And Aizawa walked in and was like, hi, Midnight. And he's about to get hit by a whip, and the whip freezes in midair. And Midnight's like, Izumi, is this your quirk too? And she goes, yeah. And then the horns and tail are fixed, and Aizawa sees the gaping impressionation of a fish on Midnight's face, and Izumi starts laughing because Aizawa almost got hit by a very sharp and barbed whip from Midnight. Because I'm going to say that heroes in this one have the authorization to kill, and they have the authorization to do tons of bodily harm to villains. So it's now time for another time skip. So she's on the last day of middle school, and she's been bullied all the way through school, preschool, middle school, elementary school, and she's about to go into high school, and UA's a college in this one. And she walks into the last day of middle school, and all these students are ready and there to beat her up. The hell are my cats doing? Oh my god, my cat is rolling around in the leaves underneath my deck. God damn it. But they're all there ready to beat her up, and she walks into campus, and well, before she walks into campus, because they know that if they beat her up on the side of the road, a hero could stop them. So she waits on the side of the campus and pulls out her phone, calls her dad, and says, do I have permission to use my quirk? And he goes, are they sitting there waiting? And she goes, yeah. And one of the students overhears this conversation, is like, oh crap. And he signals everybody and just says, run! And before he could leave or start running, all of a sudden he freezes and is just in the position of run that way. And he looks around because his head's not frozen, and he says, what the hell's going on? And Izumi just walks through the gate and walks to the classroom, and then once she sits down, the entire school is unfrozen, and the staff is wondering where everybody is, and the bell rings, and everybody runs into class waiting, and the teacher says, you're all late, what happened? And Izumi stood up and said, they're all waiting to beat me up, and then sat down. And the teacher looks at them, because the teacher has a mutation quirk, and the teacher looks a little bit like a devil, not a demon, a devil, because they have a devil tail, but that's it. Looks at all of them and says, you should be ashamed of yourself, because a lot of strong quirks have side effects like mutations. And they all ask, what do you mean? And they said, best genist, he has a mutation and it's hidden. And they all go, wait, what? And the teacher says, I also used to be a pro hero, and then I got injured. And he lifts up his shirt and shows a injury on his gut. And it's the All Might injury, so All Might doesn't have the injury. And says that I have gotten injured and I have had a strong quirk. And they ask, what was your quirk? And he says, my quirk is teleportation. I could teleport anywhere. And his fingers, he only has 3 fingers. If anybody knows that I'm going for, he also looks blue. If anybody can identify what hero I'm talking about. 10 billion points that do absolutely nothing. And Izumi walks up and says, I can heal that. You want me to heal that? Because she didn't know about the injury, and he goes, if you can heal it, please try. And so she places her hand on the wound, and she heals it completely, like nothing was there. And she says, the drawback of my healing is that you lose a few lives you lose a few years of your life. And he goes, that's fine. I wasn't meant to live much longer than a few years later, and then a few years after this. And she goes, now you're going to live to roughly, if you could live up to 100 years like a normal person, you would live up to 98 years. And he goes, oh, that's not that big of a drawback. And she goes, yeah, it's not that big of a drawback, but it still adds up if you constantly get injured. And he goes, true. And she goes, the only person who doesn't get the drawback of that healing is me. And he goes, why is that? And she goes, because I'm the person who the healing comes from. I'm the originator of the healing, so the drawback doesn't affect me. And I don't know why that exactly happens, but it does. So she walks over to her seat, sits back down, and the teacher says, I know who everybody filled out a career application, and pulls out the career application and says, there's 3 people who actually want a career, and then there's other people who want to go to a high school so they can go to a college to be heroes. And the 2 people who actually signed up to do that are Katsuki Bakugo and Izumi Aizawa. And then he says 3 other extra names and says they are the ones who are willing to be cops, firefighters, or paramedics to help the heroes. And he looks at these 3 students. One of the students has a extendo finger quirk, and another student has a winged quirk, and another student has a body manipulation quirk, and he's fat. So it's the Bakugo goons, but they are not Bakugo goons. They're just goons in this one. And he says it's going to be difficult, but I believe you guys can do it. And then he looks at Izumi and Bakugo and says, Bakugo, you have a great chance to get into UA. And he looks at Izumi and says, you're definitely going to get into UA. And Bakugo goes, what do you mean I have a great chance? I'm definitely getting into UA. I'm being the number 1 hero. And he goes, that's if Izumi doesn't get into UA. And Bakugo goes, what do you mean? They don't let in demons. And he looks at Bakugo and says, Bakugo, I was in UA when I was in school. Before I became a hero, then I became a teacher after I got the injury. Now that I don't have an injury, I might just quit my teaching job and go back to being a hero. And Bakugo goes, whatever. Damn extras. And in this one, Izumi has had contact with a hero before, and she hates this hero. And she has to go train with this hero because she has fire. And it's called Hellblaze. Not Midoriya. Meliodas has Hellblaze too, but she has Hellblaze, and she needs to train with manipulating the fire. So after school, she leaves school and she starts walking to a hero's house. And before she gets there, she gets attacked by a sludge villain. And her being a little bit heightened on her senses, hears footsteps that are really hard and really fast, and is like, and uses her telepathy and tells the sludge villain, if you want to escape, you better run because he's coming. And the sludge villain's like, what are you doing, kid? And she uses her telepathy again and says, 3, 2, 1, I am here. And the sludge villain's like, crap, I should have listened. And Izumi uses her telepathy, or telekinesis, whatever you want to call it, and she pulls the sludge villain off of her with it and says, All Might, don't touch the villain yet. I have to communicate with him real quick. And he goes, you need to run. This is a very dangerous villain. She goes, yes, and I'm going to help you with that. And she talks to the villain via her mind, and the conversation goes like this. Why are you a villain? And he says, I am a villain because I like hurting people. And she goes, no, that's a lie. Why are you a villain? And he goes, what do you mean that's a lie? I like hurting people. And she goes, I could tell it's a lie because your heart, and I can see these things, and your heart is hurting. And he goes, just because you could plainly see that stuff is happening in my life doesn't mean I'm hurting from it. And she goes, yes, you're hurting from it, and I would like to know, and I will help you with it. And he looks at her, scowls, and goes, in his mind, ooh, this is a good song. He scowls and says, my life is perfectly fine. Out loud, and she goes, no, it isn't. What is your problem? And after like 30 minutes of her just saying, what is your problem? What is your problem? He finally cracks and says, my child is sick and I need help raising him to be better. And she says, with your villainous record, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to go to prison, but I could probably help your child. And he goes, if you can help them, please do. And he says, my child is here. And he tells her a abandoned building and says, All Might, there's a child that is stuck at a abandoned building that is his child, and this child is sick and we need to help him. And All Might goes, what do you mean? And she says that the sludge villain has only been a villain because he's been trying to save his child from this illness. And the medical bills in this town are ridiculous. And All Might goes, okay, I will take this villain to the police station, have him confess. And Izumi says, no need, I've just called the police, and I called my father too. And All Might goes, who's your father? And she goes, Aizawa. And All Might pales at this and going, have a great day, I'll be back. And he runs off to this abandoned building, picks up the child, and sees the child has a very bad condition of the mutation quirk is killing them. He runs back and he shows the child to the sludge villain, and the sludge villain starts crying and says, yes, that's my child, I would like you guys to take care of him so he gets better. And Izumi sees the half sludge, half human side and is like, okay, I understand what the problem is. And she walks up to the child and puts her hand on top of its head and uses some of her power, and the child turns full human. And the sludge villain sees this and is like, you saved him, thank you. And she goes, yes, but there's a downside to this. He loses 4 years of his life. And the sludge villain goes, that makes sense because his condition was really bad. So Izumi says, yes, it was bad, and now it's time for you to pay up on your side of the deal. And he goes, yes, and he gets let down, and he walks or sludges along with All Might right next to him, saying, you did the right thing, and I'm happy that your child is now safe. And the child wakes up and asks what's going on, and is not coughing anymore, and starts patting himself and sees that both of his hands are normal. And she goes, you're fixed, and now your quirk is the ability to change into sludge. And he looks at her and goes, are you the one who saved me, miss? And she goes, yes, I am. And he goes, thank you, and hugs her. Aizawa shows up and says, where's the villain? And Izumi says that the villain has been taken by All Might to the police station, and this is his child, and we need to help this child. And Aizawa says, I can do that. What is his quirk? And she says, his quirk is a mutation, and I just fixed it. It will unlock in a year, so he can change his whole entire body into sludge. And Aizawa looks at her and says, what did you do to do that? And she says, you remember my quirk's name is Demon Magic. Oh, the ability to use Demon Magic. I used the pact ability of the Demon Magic, so I made a pact with the sludge villain that he would turn himself in, and the child would be saved. And she's still hugging him, and she asks what is his name, and he says that his name is Billy. I can't think of any other names besides Billy at this moment, so I'll probably think of a different name. No, not Billy. I'm gonna make him really overpowered at the end of this. I'm gonna call him Gon. Gon. His name is Gon. And he asks, where is his father? And Izumi says, your father is going away for a little bit because of what he's done. And Gon says, okay, I understand. I wanted him to do it correctly. And Izumi says, yeah, and you're going to be living with me and my father over here. And she points to Aizawa, and Gon says, okay, so what do I have to do? And she says, you just have to be a little kid. In a year, you're going to unlock your quirk to transform into sludge, and when that quirk is manifesting, Aizawa and I will help you, and we will make sure that you don't hurt yourself. 4 years later, Gon has mastered his quirk because he had to master it quickly or he would have hurt himself really badly. And his father, being a petty criminal but still being a villain, gets released from prison, and he comes and picks up Gon and says, I've missed you, I've done what you've asked of me, and I wanted to tell you I'm sorry for what I've done. And Gon says, I forgive you, but one question. And he says, what is it? Do you have a job? And he goes, no. And Gon says, once you get a job and are able to buy a home, I will gladly come back to you so you can take care of me. And the sludge villain says, sure. And Izumi says, I am off. I am going to UA this year. And Gon says, okay, see you later. And Aizawa says, I'm also going to UA because I'm a teacher there. And Gon says, okay. So 10 months later, the sludge villain has had a full-time job. He's changed his personality completely from being apparently a ruthless villain to a kind-hearted man that is misguided to being on the right track. So now it's time for Gon to move back with him, and Gon moves back, and the sludge villain's like, yay. So the sludge villain's not a threat anymore. And there's a specific villain that's trying to get the demon magic part of Izumi's quirk. So he is plotting stuff, and since Izumi has demon magic as part of her quirk, she has everything a demon can do. So if you guys want me to get a specific demonic ability from a specific era or mythology, put it in the comments and I'll research it. But most demons have multiple hearts, and that's in multiple stories. So I'm going to give her 7 hearts. I'm giving her hyper regeneration, and I'm giving her the assault mode. And the assault mode is like Meliodas' assault mode, but instead it shows this outfit on her, but when she's in normal outfits. Because I'm tired of saying that, oh, she changes into her hero outfit. No, she just changes into assault mode, or they activate their quirk and it covers them. So that's going to be a theme in all my what ifs from now on, is that the quirk changes them into their hero costumes. So Izumi is now at the recommendations, and Aizawa is overwatching the recommendations and says that I cannot give you special treatment because you're my daughter. And she says that's fine. And she still doesn't know that her mother died in a forest out in the middle of nowhere. But she does know that Aizawa and Miss Joke and Midnight and Mirko are all adoptive parents. So it's now... So she passes the recommendation. She gets in. And Nezu, wanting to meet the apparent demon of the classroom, calls in Izumi one day and says, I'd like to talk with her. Aizawa says, sure. He drives Izumi to UA and says that the principal likes to talk to you. And she goes, sure. And now it's time for the chat between Izumi and Nezu. And Nezu sees Izumi and has a chill run down his spine because he sees not a little girl, but a demon. And he knows that she's as kind as a little girl and says, I have a deal for you. And she goes, ooh, deal. What is it? And he says, I have a deal. If you can beat me in a test of smarts, I'll make you a teacher at UA. And Aizawa saying how smart she is, she looks at Nezu and says, are you willing to lose your position as the smartest person in school? And Nezu goes, I'm perfectly willing to lose my position as the smartest person in school if you can beat me in wits and the test I have written up. Or I had everybody in school write up for me and you. And she looks at this test and says, oh, this is easy. She fills it out, 100% complete, and fixes some of the questions, words. And Nezu filled it out 100% complete and fixed one word that he saw wrong, but Izumi saw like 3 or 4. So she beat him on the test, and Nezu says, I understand. And now it's a Jeopardy kind of a test. And Izumi goes for the 500s immediately. Nezu goes for the 500s immediately. Izumi gets barely above Nezu by the 100, and the tests are done, and Nezu says, "You have won." I bow down to the smartest person in class in this school and says, "You are now the 1A teacher, but you have to corral them in more than normal." And she asks why, and he goes, "You are their age, and you have a mutation quirk, and most people discriminate against your people." And she goes, "I understand. I have a plan for that." So we skip to the first day of school, and Aizawa is there just hiding, and Izumi walks in, acts like a student, sits at a desk, and waits, and the class starts, and they're just standing, talking, and waiting for the teacher to come in, and Izumi stands up and opens a portal and walks through and is at the front of the class with a different outfit on. She has this outfit on, and she's just standing there. She's just a little bit shorter than the podium, so she walks in front of the podium and just stands there, and everybody looks at her and then continues talking. And then Aizawa, getting tired of their talking because he's trying to sleep, finally gets up and flashes his eyes saying, "Shut up, problem children!" And they all get scared except for Izumi, and Izumi's just standing there. And she says, "It took you 10 minutes to shut up, and it took you a adult, because you're all children, an adult to shut you up." And they go, "Why are you talking? You're part of our class." And she goes, "Oh, no, I'm the teacher." And they all look at her like she's crazy. She goes, "Yeah, I'm the teacher. Anybody want to test me about it?" And they say, and Bakugo says, "Hell yeah, you're just another demon." And she goes, "Okay, I'll make a deal with you." And he looks at her and goes, "What's the deal?" And she goes, "If you can beat me in the quirk assessment test, I shall step down as teacher and have my father," and she points at Aizawa, "teach this class." And they're like, "Why does he get to?" And he's like, "Fine, I'll make a deal with all of you. And my quirk is part of this deal. So if you guys lose this bet, sort of, you have to follow my instructions to the T when I give you instructions." And they pale at this and go, "Okay, we will win, but okay." And she goes, "Okay, everybody get your gym suits on, and I'll send you out to the field after I see that you have your gym uniforms on." So she walks out into the changing room and sees the hole, and then uses her space manipulation to crush the hole and send a spike out the other side that impales Mineta in the eye, and Mineta's now blind in one eye and bleeding. He runs out of the room screaming, and she walks out of the girls' changing room and slaps him in the side of the face, going, "You shouldn't look at girls when they're changing, unless you're her boyfriend." And they go, "Okay." And he starts crying and says, "Yes, ma'am." And she heals his eye and says, "You now lost a day of your life." And he goes, "What do you mean?" She goes, "That's part of my quirk too. I exchange time of your life for heal." And All Might, who has heard about this child, is just sitting in the background waiting, and she knows he's there, but they're out in the field now, and it's time for the ball throw. She has everybody else go, and it's her time, and she throws it. The only one who is better than her at the ball throw is Ochako, because Ochako gets infinity, and she also gets infinity. But she gets infinity, and it hits a planet. So it says the exact distance between there and the planet. She goes, "Damn it, I hit a planet." And they all look at her like she's crazy, and she goes, "Yeah." And she shows the distance, and they're like, "Ugh." So it's now the race, and the only one who beats her by 0.1 milliseconds is Ida, and she goes, "Damn it." Okay, the rest, and she beats them in the rest, and on average, she was better than everybody else. So she's number one, and everybody else is, or Bakugo's number two, Todoroki's number three, Momo's number four. And her quirk takes effect, and she claims the reward of them having to respect her and follow her instructions when she says instructions. And she says, the day's over, go home. So they change and go home, and Aizawa, who's watching this whole thing, and All Might, who was hiding in the corner, or Aizawa says, that was good work, and she goes, you can come out now. And Aizawa goes, what? And she goes, yeah, All Might's been watching us. And All Might being like, haha, I am here. And she goes, yeah, I noticed you the entire time. And he goes, oh, damn it. And she goes, you like what I did with the students? And he goes, yeah, but I have a challenge for you. And she goes, ooh, challenges, I like them. So he says, it's time for them to learn if they're true heroes or not. And she goes, ooh, I like that. I have an ability for them to tell the truth the entire time, and I will ask them a question when they walk into class. Telepathy. In their mind, of course, and they only need to answer in yes or no. And so we skip to the next day, and everybody's slowly walking into class. They're trickling in, and first one into class is Ida, and she asked him through his mind, what are your goals? And if they're heroic, just say yes. And if they're not heroic, and because of her knowledge of what heroes are and what they should be, she implants this knowledge into his mind and this idea into his mind while he's trying to answer this. And he looks around confused, but then has to answer because of the pact that they made with her quirk, saying no, they're not. And he's like, wait, what did I just say? And she says, okay. And she gets a yes, no, yes, yes, no, 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 no. And she looks at these people who said yes, and look at Kirishima and says, you are a hero. She looks at Mina, you are a hero. She looks at Shoji, says, you are a hero. She looks at Aoyama, you're just weird. Then she looks at Tail Dude. Damn it! I had his name yesterday. She looks at Tail Dude and says, you are not a hero. You're a hero. And she looks at Hergakure and says, you are a stealth hero, but you are a hero nonetheless. And she looks at the rest of the class and says, you are all non-heroes. And they all look at her like they're confused. And she says, when you walked in, did you not hear a message in your mind saying, asking a question if you're a hero or not? And they all go, yeah, we did. And she goes, that was me asking you a question because I have telepathy. And they are like, what can't she do? And she says, nothing. In their minds. And they go, that's going to be crazy and creepy. And she's like, yeah. Good thing I can't see your deepest, darkest secrets. I don't want to see that. And they go, oh God, that would be nightmarish. And then she looks at Mineta and says, you're expelled. And Mineta goes, what do you mean? And she goes, you could stop thinking of that for one. And second off, I don't like your attitude towards girls. And he goes, I'm sorry. And just runs out. And she's like, second order of business. Soon we're going to be getting dorms. And they're like, what do you mean? She's like, from words from the principal, it's for your protection. We're getting dorms. But really, it's easier for you guys to learn. And so I can teach you better. And they're like, oh God. And she says, okay, now before hero training, I'm going to be teaching you mentally while you guys do some exercises. And they look at her like she's crazy. And she goes, don't worry. I have the entire expanse of UA in my head, and I shall draw you guys a map in your head. So she draws them a map and says, you must run that 3 times. And all of these students pale. And she goes, the only ones who don't have to run it 3 times are the true heroes. They have to run it 4. And Mina and Kirishima and Shoji and the tail dude all pale at this and go, oh, but, and she's like, I'm making sure that you can become a hero. I'm making sure that you are a true hero. And they're like, okay, we can get behind that. And so while they're running, Shoji, Tail Dude, Kirishima, and Mina are all learning history and fighting techniques through Izumi, and they get a choice at the end to have a pact to where when I give you an order, you have unlimited stamina until the order is done, but then you feel all the fatigue for that day and you heal a little bit faster, but it takes a year off your life for the rest of your life. They hear this and they're like, can we think about it? And she goes, yes, but I must have an answer by tomorrow. So the next day comes around. Shoji says yes. Kirishima says yes. Mina says yes. And Tail Dude says, I'm sorry, but no. I would like to train my own way. And she goes, that's fine. And says, we're doing the run again. But today, we're not doing as many laps. And Izumi says, you have 2 laps, all of you, but the true heroes have 3. And everybody, except for Mina, Kirishima, and Shoji, get exhausted after the first lap. And now it's time for All Might's class. And Izumi says, I'm coming with you to make sure that my students are behaving. And he goes, sure. So he draws lots and says that, okay, everybody, now it's time for these. And she says, okay, the 4 that I've claimed as true heroes are going to fight me, and everybody else has to deal with each other. And they know who they are because they're in their hero costumes and they have the pact on. So they walk up to her and say, hey, this is going to be fun and a nightmare at the same time. And she goes, yeah, it is going to be fun for me. And she says, I'm going to show you some stuff that you're not going to like, but you're going to be thankful for it in the future. And they'll be like, okay. So we skip to the end where it's the 4 versus her. She walks into the building and she shuts the front door of the building, and all the windows turn to brick. So they can't see into the building. The building is completely pitch black, and when she's ready, she says go, and they walk into the building, and Kirishima's like, if Shoji could throw me, and Shoji still having a lot of energy, he throws Kirishima onto the roof. Kirishima breaks down that door, and what they see, they immediately throw up at. And they ask what the hell's going on, and I'll be right back. I gotta do something. So it's now the beginning. They all threw up. And it's time for them to walk the rest of the way in. So Kirishima has busted through the door at the top, and he fell down a flight of stairs while he was hardened. And since he's had unlimited stamina and fast regeneration to help get rid of the fatigue a little faster, he has now the ability to regenerate while hardening faster. So once he starts bleeding, his blood heals him really quickly. So he hardens a lot stronger, a lot faster, and he only needs to be beaten up a little bit. So it's Kirishima sees the scene in front of him, and he yells, doesn't scream, yells. And All Might, who can't see into it, thinks, if Izumi could hear the voice in my head, I wish to see what they see. And Izumi, hearing this, because she linked with All Might for this, so she can easily contact him when the test is over, says, sure thing, and links their vision with his, and he closes his eyes, and he blinks and sees a flash of what they see, and without seeing the full picture, vomits. He empties everything in his stomach. And everybody asks what happened, and he goes, I saw what they saw. You don't want to see this. And Izumi goes, ooh, good idea. And she plays the entire footage from Mina's, Shoji's, Tail Dude's, and Kirishima's eyes to these students, and they all vomit. And and everybody's like, oh god, this is disgusting. And they can't open their eyes because they're entranced into what they see. And All Might, who's seen this before, is like, oh god, this is disgusting. It's worse than I've seen before. And Izumi goes, I know. And Kirishima sees a thing in front of him, and he screams. And Mina sees a bug, because all women have an affliction to bugs for some reason. And she screams because it scared her. Shoji is the kind-hearted giant that he is. Sees the mouse and is about to step on it and stops moving, and then it runs off, and he's like, oh god, I can easily crush these kind, nice little creatures. And then he accidentally steps on one of the fake tails, and it starts running at him. All of them start running at him and trying to eat him. Dishonored, sorry. Then it's who else? The Tail Dude. He sees a bloodied scene and torn clothes on the ground that seem to be on top of a body. And Higakure sees this and is like, what's happening? Why am I there? And they all go, I don't know. So, Tail Dude starts to get pissed, and they see that he punched a wall, and like, okay, that's strange. So we skip to the end of the test. Izumi has won. For just her standing there, she's won. And everybody in class is now scared of her. And she says, has anybody learned anything? And Kirishima says, I need to get over my fears. I need to... And Mina says, I now understand why you are now the teacher. And the Tail Dude says, I have understood my feelings for people, and I now shall protect them with my life instead of having them die. And Shoji says, fear. Because he's still the silent type in this one. He says with his actual mouth, fear. And Izumi, understanding what he meant, starts laughing and says, okay, training's over for the day. Go to your dorms. And they're like, wait, what? She goes, yeah, the dorms are done. And they ask, are you going to be living with us? And she goes, definitely. And they go, please don't show what you just showed us. And she goes, don't worry, the dorms aren't trapped yet. And they pale at this a little, and she goes, what? It'd be funny. And she goes, also, we have to have an adult with us that's over 21. So my father's going to be living with us too. And I said, the zombie? She goes, if he heard you say that, you'd be doing 10 times worse training than I give you. And they go, oh, we're not going to say that in front of him anymore. So we skip to the USJ, and Izumi has said that if anything happens at the USJ, let her take care of it. And Aizawa, All Might, and 13 all have to come for the adult supervision, because they have to have older people and people that Nezu trusts more than Izumi. And Izumi's a little hurt because Nezu doesn't trust her. But All Might and Aizawa are there. So when Shigaraki shows up and sees All Might, he's like, we are here to kill you. And all of a sudden, Izumi teleports in front of him and says, I have a deal for you. Are you willing to hear it out? And Shigaraki tries to grab Izumi, not answering her question. And she goes, that's rude to touch a girl when she doesn't want to be touched. Are you willing to hear out my deal? Because the price has just gone up. And Shigaraki, not understanding her question, says, fine, just talk. And he's still a man-child, a little. So he starts scratching, and Izumi says, I can help you with your afflictions and your problems, but you have to stop being a villain and you have to turn yourself in for all the villainous acts you've committed. And Shigaraki looks at her and says, there's got to be a catch. And she goes, yes, you lose 5 years of your life because you touched me. And he's like, I didn't touch you. I never got near you. She goes, you almost touched me. That cost you 5 years of your life. And he goes, it's an enticing deal. And she goes, yeah, you don't even need to spill anything. And this is in his mind now. You don't need to spill anything about All for One or any of your creatures that you have hidden. And his eyes widen and says, fine, I take your deal. And so Izumi flicks him in the forehead and says, you just lost 5 years of your life and the deal is sealed. When you go back to All for One, and she's now saying this in real life, once you go back to All for One, your afflictions and your pain shall not be there anymore. And Shigaraki's like, fine. And he's like, I still want to kill All Might. And she goes, you can't kill All Might because you promised to turn yourself in. And he's like, okay. Because he can't move any forward towards All Might. And he can't say, Kurogiri, bring out the Nomu, because his promise with Izumi. And now it's time for him to go home. He goes home and All for One says, was your job successful? And Kurogiri says that he never told me to bring out the Nomu or never made a move towards All Might. And Shigaraki, being enticed by the pact, says, I'm leaving and I'll be gone for a while. And All for One says, okay, be back by sunset. And he goes, I'll try. And so he goes to the police station and says his crimes and what he did when he was little. And says that he's very young for being a villain. And he says he's just turning 18. And they say, okay, since we can't arrest you or try you as an adult yet, because you're just turning 18, you must go to UA and practice with your quirk. And he goes, okay, and he travels to UA with a police officer, and Nezu heard about this incident at the USJ, and they still did the USJ activities, so he waits at the gate because of the pact, and he knows Izumi's pacts are guaranteed to work. So it's time for Tomura Shigaraki, to join their class. And Izumi says, there's a new student here, and you probably saw him at the USJ, but don't call him a villain, because he's not a villain, and his quirk is worse than mine, so if you call him a villain, I will personally make your training 10 times harder. And Kirishima's like, oh, was it that handy dude? And she goes, yeah. He's a little crusty, but he seems like a child. And she goes, he was a child, now he's should be a little bit better. Shigaraki comes into class and says, I'm here to fix my mistakes and become a hero. And she goes, do you know everything? And he goes, yes. And she goes, good. And you understand what that one dude wanted from you? And he goes, definitely. And so now it's time for the sports festival. Shigaraki is not allowed to go to the sports festival. Well, he's not allowed to participate in the sports festival. And Izumi is currently in the teacher's booth, and she's overwatching the entire thing. And Overhaul, who's watching the sports festival, sees Tomura in the stands in the 1A bleachers and is like, what the hell? So he tells Kurogiri to send him to the area, and Izumi, sensing that he's coming, teleports down and says the sports festival has been postponed, and Nezu, wondering why, he asks if anybody knows what's happening, and they go no. And all of a sudden a portal opens up in the middle of the sports festival, and Izumi says it's been postponed because I have a bargain to sell. And they're like, what do you mean? And the number one villain walks out and says, well, All for One, I know you're coming for Tomura Shigaraki, but I have a deal for you. And uh, all the heroes that were there are currently paling at the vision of All for One, or the vestige of All for One that is in front of them. And he goes, "Get out of my way, damn devil." And she goes, "It's not nice to call names." And she flicks him and says, "That's for being mean." And then she flicks him again, and "That's for ignoring me slightly." And he goes, "What did you just do?" And she goes, "I just took some of your quirks." And he looks at her and goes, "There's no way. I'm the only one who can take quirks." And she goes, "No, I'm the demon queen." And so he's like, "Fine, I'll hear out your pact." And she goes, "This is a deal that you cannot refuse, because I know your goal and I can help you achieve it." And she says, "I will give you immortality for your pledged allegiance to me." And he goes, "There's something more than this." And she goes, "Yes, you lose all your quirks and you lose your scars." And he hears losing the scars and is like, And so she's like, "You got 10 seconds to answer or I will obliterate you like the time you obliterated Nana Shimura in front of All Might and her grandson." And All for One, remembering that fight, is like, "Fine, I'll take it." And so she slams him to the ground like nothing, like the villain he is. And he gets up, his scars are gone, he looks like a normal person. And then he asks, "Am I immortal?" And she stabs him through the heart and says, "You are immortal now. You are also pledged to me, so whatever I say, you have to do. And I say you cannot do any villainous acts for the rest of your life." And he looks at her and goes, "God damn it." And so he walks away, and he just sits at the outside of the sports festival because he's bored, because he can't do any villainous acts and have fun. So she walks out, and since Kurogiri saw this, is like, I will finish his dream, because he's basically bound to All for One's dream. So he gets a group together to capture Izumi and destroy her, or destroy other things and ruin Izumi. And at this point, Izumi has gone out with multiple people, and it's now time for the teachers versus students, and Izumi is against the entire class. And she says, "You have to either hold me down for 5 seconds, or you have to escape the building." And this is a 2-story building, and the walls are made out of titanium, so no one in this class can break it. All Might himself did this test and was barely able to escape with his lunch intact. And they're like, "Yes, ma'am." And the true heroes in class have grown from just Kirishima, the tail dude, Shoji, and Mina, to Kirishima, Shoji, Mina, tail dude, Ida, Tetsu, because Mineta was kicked out, Tetsu, Kendo, because I don't like Aoyama, Bakugo, who had the task of fixing his personality from the teacher, and he has to follow her instructions. So he started to fix his personality, and it's now, who else? Hagakure is obviously there, but she made an extra pact to lose 5 more years of her life, or 5 years of her life, and gain the ability to control her invisibility. So she now is seen, and Izumi likes what she sees. So Izumi, Hagakure, Um. Hmm. Shinso was added to the class because there's no Midoriya. Todoroki still has daddy issues, but he's a true hero in his mindset. Pretty much everybody in Class 1A, and for the exception of Ochako. She still has her, I want to give my parents the life that they deserve because of what they've done for me. Oops. But Izumi's like, that's not that bad of a mindset, but still not as good as I want. So everybody except for Ochako has the limitless fatigue and then instant fatigue breakdown for their training, and it's gotten less and less, but then she ups the training, and then they're like, oh god, I'm dying again. And so they're trying to escape the building, and the only one who does not escape is Ochako in the 10-minute time limit, because she loses her lunch multiple times over. And so everybody except Ochako is able to do the forced activities. So they go to the training camp, and Izumi, being one of the teachers, gets to ride the bus. So everybody who's training in the forest now, they're not actually fighting to get there. They're training in the forest. And 10 hours later, they finally get there, and it's midnight, and all the pussycats are like, what the hell happened? And Izumi says, how's your training? And everybody's like, fun. Ochako is dying. It's like, terrible. But everybody else is like, fun. And then they're like, where's our rooms? And they run to the rooms. They flop on their bed, and then lights out. Everybody passes out. Ochako didn't make it to her room, and she's asleep on the ground. And like, if you touch her, she's going to freak out and probably hurt even worse tomorrow. So don't touch her. And Izumi walks over to Ochako and mentally, while she's in her dream, pops in there and asks, do you want to make a deal? And Ochako goes, depending on the deal, sure. And she said, do you want to abandon your mindset for heroism and increase your training so you have better control over your quirk and you could still help your parents, but you're still doing it for other people instead of your selfish goal of just helping your parents, then living a good life. And Ochako, hearing this new deal, asks what's the catch, and Izumi says that you lose 10 years of your life instead of 5 like everybody else, because it's increasing her power by a lot. And Ochako says, sure, I'll do so. And Izumi goes, great! By the way, I'm real. And she poofs away. And Ochako, not knowing what she meant, woke up and she felt perfectly fine. And then she remembered the dream and was like, no! Damn it! So everybody trains 10 times harder than in canon. And Kurogiri lines up to capture Izumi, and Izumi's just walking around having fun, and it's now the test of courage, and Izumi is doing it with Hagakure, and what pretty much no one knows is Izumi is very scared of jump scares. That's her only weakness, is jump scares. But she normally knows when they're coming. She turned off her sensing ability and her other abilities. And Higakure is walking with her and
talking with her, and then all of a sudden, jump scare, and Izumi jumps into Hagakure's arms, being like, that's freaky. And Hagakure laughs, being like, normally you're not scared. And she goes, yeah, because I have a detection ability that I normally keep on. But test of courage, I can't do it. And starts to hug Hagakure really tightly. And Hagakure's like, oh, you're crushing me a little. And Izumi goes, oh, sorry. And lets up and says, can you help me with this? Because she still has problems with fear, but she normally has her detection ability on, so she knows where everybody is. And Kendo, who's helping class 1B with the jump scares, saw that she jump scared her teacher and is like, oh, I know her weakness now. So after the test, when it's 1B's turn, then the portal opens and everybody starts getting in their positions. And Izumi turns on her detection again and senses more than the students. And she immediately she uses her telepathy. She's a telepath, so she uses her telepathy to talk to other people and tell them that you need to get back to the cabin immediately, and tell Aizawa, who is listening, she tells him that there's multiple villains here and they're willing to kill to get to me. And he goes, how do you know this? And she goes, I read one of their minds and they're willing to kill these students to get to me. And so she goes off and helps the students get back to the thing. She finds Muscular attacking Koda and tells Muscular, do you want to kill more people? And he goes, yes, I want to kill everybody. And she goes, I can help you with that. And Koda, looking at her crazily, scared, asks, who are you? And she goes, I am the demon of the pact. And her hero name is called Pact Mistress, and she's known as the demon of the pact. And the villains are now scared of this demon of the pact because they get what they want, but they can't be villains anymore. And they keep getting bugged until they're villains, until they accept. And so Muscular says, what are you offering me? And she says, I'll offer you the ability to kill whoever you want in your dreams, and it feels like reality, but you cannot be a villain anymore. You must be a hero. And Muscular looks at her and says, will I get the same feeling of euphoria? And she goes, definitely. And he says, sure, what's the catch? And she goes, no catch. You just can't kill anymore in real life. And he goes, I'm killing in my dreams. I get to kill all I want. And she goes, true. So do you agree? And he sticks out his hand for a handshake, and he goes, yeah, I agree. And so he shakes her hand, and he gets the ability to dream about whoever he wants to kill. So he says, okay, I give up on being a villain, and he pulls off the eye and says, I'm Muscular, the hero now. And she goes, good, I'll take you to Nezu well, first off, you need to do your time in prison, and you can dream there too. So I'm guessing you're fine with going to prison. He's like, yeah, I get to dream about killing people there. So Muscular walks to the police station. That's a few kilometers away. Then she teleports to Toga, and she tells Toga, are you sick and tired of this addiction to blood? And she goes, no, blood's awesome. And she goes, you're still addicted to blood, and I'm here to help you with that. And Toga goes, there's no need to help me. You may be even cuter if you bleed a little. And Izumi goes, okay, I understand. And she taps Toga's head and says, now can you think better? And she goes, yeah. And Izumi starts complimenting Toga, and Toga starts blushing a little, and Izumi says, I'll go out with you, and I'll let you see some of my blood if you stop being a villain. And Toga, who's still addicted to blood, accepts the steal immediately. But then she doesn't read the fine print because she just wants to see Izumi bleed. And Izumi says, now for the fine print, since you already agreed. You cannot be a villain anymore, and You must join my class. And Toga says, that's fine. I get to see you bleed. And Toga is now walking to the building and then sits down outside the building. Toga goes to Twice and says, would you like me to help you with your problem? And Twice says, yes, no. And Izumi says, I will talk to the original. So she flicks the mind of Twice, and it basically connects together, and he's like, I can think now. And he starts crying and says, whatever the deal is, I'll take it. I can think. And she goes, okay, you cannot be a villain, and you cannot hurt people without helping people first. And he goes, that's fine. And so he's not a villain anymore, and now it's on to Toga. Not Toga, Toya. The burnt chicken nugget Dobby. If anybody's seen the latest of the Crunchy Fets videos, which was earlier today, of the what if Femme Deku had a harem. And this is where I got the idea of a Femme Deku with a demon quirk. But I've also been wanting to do this, so this is my own version. So, yes, I'm using his pictures, so sue me if you want, but I don't know where he gets these pictures. I said this at the beginning. Where the hell does he get his pictures? So she teleports in front of him and says, I'm willing to make a deal to ruin Endeavor's career if you're willing to change your direction. And he says, I'm here to stop all fake villains, and I've followed in the steps of the hero killer Stain. And she goes, that's just it. I will help you achieve your goal if you stop killing. And he goes, what's in it for me? And she goes, I will personally destroy Endeavor's career with one word, and I'll personally make sure that you're in my class, since he's just a little bit older than Todoroki. So then she reaches Spinner, who's a full-grown adult, and she says, I can't help you, but I can give you the ability to use swords better. And he looks at her and goes, what do you mean? And she gives him a deal, and he says, I'm sorry, but I'm not taking that. And he goes, what about this? I'll help you with your true hero ideals, and I'll give you people who aren't true heroes, but you can't kill them. And he's like, a hero that helps with getting rid of fake heroes, but I can't kill them. He asks, what's the catch? And she goes, nothing, just you can't kill them. And he goes, fine, one hero a week that I can't kill and you give me. And she goes, you can't kill any hero. You could beat them up hella bad, but you can't kill any hero. And he goes, oh, okay. I take that deal. And so he takes the deal, and he then goes off, and Kurogiri now has nobody that follows him. And he's starting to get pissed off, and so it's now time for the licensing exams, and Kurogiri opens a portal while Izumi's walking into the building and abducts Izumi, and Izumi, who knew the portal was going to show up, and just walked through it. Aizawa saw that Izumi's not there, but got a mental message from Izumi that I'm okay. Don't worry. And Kurogiri asks Izumi how is her day going, and she's in a quirk suppressing room, which doesn't work on her because of her mutation. And she goes, it's good. I don't like what you did to me, but it's good. He goes, well, I'm glad. And I have a deal for you. And she goes, what is the deal? He goes, You release my master from your pact and you don't get hurt. And she goes, how about this? We ask him if he wants to be released from his pact, and if he does, I will let him go for free. No catch, no nothing. And Kuragiri says, I will take that deal. So Izumi opens a portal, and Kuragiri, his eyes widen, thinking that she wouldn't be able to do anything. And One for All walks in and says, what is it? And she says, would you like to be released from my pact? So you're mortal, and since you're past your expiration date, you lose your life immediately. You get your powers back, obviously, but you lose your life immediately. And next thing that happens is Kuragiri gets your powers, and he looks at Kuragiri and says, I want to stay immortal. Can I please stay immortal? And Kuragiri, his eyes widen and says, and Izumi says, yes. Then the deal is complete. Goodbye. And she opens two portals. She walks through one, and All for One walks through the other. Back to where he was working. He was working at a quarry, mining ore for the UA. And then he runs into a statue and broke a tool on this statue and called Nezu, and Nezu said, oh God, what is this? And then he calls Izumi, and Izumi comes over and sees this soul standing in front of her and says, I'll tell Nezu about that in a second. So she talks to Nezu, and All Might's there, Aizawa's there, and Nezu asks, what the hell is this? And Izumi says, I don't know, let me ask somebody. So she walks over to the statue, bows respectfully, and says, hello, what is your name? I would like to understand your story. And Naruko looks at her and is like, you can see me? And Izumi says, yes, I have the ability of demons, and I would like to know what your name is. And she says, my name is Naruko. I'm the Nine-Tails Demon Fox, and I have been here for the last few millennia, stopping people from resurrecting the end of the world. And she points to the statue and says, that was my body, and now it's forever sealing the end of the world, and it shall never ever be released again. And Izumi sees this and says, I have a deal for you. And this will help you and the ability to protect the world. I will personally teleport this to the center of the earth with a protective bubble around it so it doesn't get harmed at all. And you get a new body. Hold on, I'll be right back. And Naruko, thinking about this for a little bit, says, would I be able to see my daughter again? And Izumi, he says, I don't know who your daughter is, and if so, if I can find her soul in the pure world. And she mentions the pure world so casually, and Naruko says, the pure world is still around? And Izumi says, no. The pure world is where all souls go when they die, and the Shinigami, and she just mentions the Shinigami by name and says, the Shinigami has come to me in a meeting before and has told me about the pure world because of my ability to summon out of it. And Naruko looks at her like she's seeing something out of a fairy tale and says, what are you? And Izumi says, I am a human who has the ability of demons. And they keep talking about their situation, and Naruko, who's been thinking about the deal, says, what is the conditions of the pact? And Izumi says that you must become a hero of this new world. You must understand this new world by yourself, and if I can find your daughter, she will be under my control if I ask her to do stuff. And Naruko says, if you can find my daughter, make her a human, but with the quirk called Kitsune. And Izumi says, I will do that. And Naruko says, okay, sure. So Naruko gains a body immediately, and a paper, this time, a paper floats in front of Naruko, and Izumi says, since you were a soul and you just got a body, I have to make a body for you from scratch, and you must place some blood on this seal instead of me just flicking your forehead and taking it. And Naruko, understanding because of blood seals that used to be around, says sure. So she puts a little bit of her blood on the paper, and the paper poofs and says his deal has been signed. And Izumi disappears. And she comes back, and she has a little mini soul in her hand, the size of a baby, and says, I have found her. And what was her name? And that's where I'm going to leave it off. It's your turn to input a name, because I can't think of every name. It's Naruko's daughter, and Naruko's daughter, and now that happened, Naruko will probably summon an Edo Tensei, because she still knows the Edo Tensei. She still knows all of her jutsus. She's still the nine-tailed demon fox. She's immortal because of it. And her new body is immortal because of it. And now that Naruko's back, let's see if she can summon Sasuke from the Pure World so she can hang out with him. And so hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you guys really like this, think about hitting the like button. This is going to be a part 1. And when the Crunchy Fett finishes his series, I'm going to put the part 2 of this, and that's going to be fun. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, and hopefully this actually recorded my voice, because if it didn't, fuck. So talk to you guys later. Bye.